All right. Enough of that. Here we are. It's the day after my birthday because, well, I was tired. I've been working 12-hour shifts, getting a tan, getting a workout, getting some money. Thank God. So hopefully I will still be able to do some explorations this summer and make it through the Badlands at the end of August if my work schedule continues. On that note, I was tired, slept through the last 2 days because a lot has gone on. There was the whole Trump assassination, whatever your take is on that. Who knows? Thank God he's alive and America hasn't descended into further chaos. But right now, what we're to discuss? Well, it was my birthday, so why not announce the BERN, right? BurnCon, but the BERN Conference, Breakthrough Energy Research Network Conference. That is something I am going to be creating and doing, and it comes from, well, a little bit of APEC and a little bit of the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement, another conference that takes the inspiration from, but it's been a while since they've done one. So, well, I'm going to try and take the reins on that and do her online. And we've got the connections and the people to make it happen. And a big part of it is, well, what's between Bert and Ernie and the Alchemist minions here. Well, it's the HHO gas, the electrolysis, the cavitation, the monoatomics, the ormus, and the rest of it. And, well, as I just turned 39, but lots of people say I'll still look 28. Is it because of stuff like this? My water that I drink, monoatomic gold, the gold plasmids with the silver, and how it structures water. And you can see there the exclusion zones, but they're, it's this gold water, the monoatomics, right? The white powdered stuff. You never glow with blue. If it's oxidized, it will kill you. Yeah, so you can see it's blue compared to the white label. This stuff, that'll kill you. You don't want to turn into Papa Smurf. Papa Smurf, you're going to die. But the white stuff, maybe it keeps you younger. And that purple stuff, I've been trying it lately, and it seems to work, and it actually makes the water taste sweet. So I'm guinea pigging on myself. I haven't turned purple yet. It's actually just blue lights that you see. If I am looking purple, it's not actually me. All right. What we're going to do, look at, or listen to, is some presentations of the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement, and do a little bit of learning on water. What is water? The power of water. And yeah, this is what BERN Conference is going to be about, and we're going to keep developing it and get the watered power cars going, right? What's better than driving in a watered power car? And in this presentation, we're going to hear about the Joe cell a bit and so much more. So without further ado, I'm going to play it for all of you.
At Marburg in Berlin, also studied mathematics, chemistry, medicine, and philosophy, but his heart was in physics. He focused on nuclear methods for studying solid-state matter. But as an adult, he's a professor, entrepreneur, for fuels-based water, and I would still say currently exploring some of the mysteries of water as well. He works as a consultant in Germany and a professor for digital developments. And we are happy to welcome him here.
Yeah. There we are.
And there you are. Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome to the stage, Dr. and Professor Theo Almeida Murphy.
You know, when a magician reaches the stage, he always has a black bag, and then he holds something out. So I thought, as an experimental physicist, it's always nice to have something in the hand. So this is a Joe cell. One of the modern day Joe cells. Don't keep it because there is still water in. So I will pass it around. Maybe, gentlemen, thank you very much. So you can touch it and have it in the hand. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Dear friends, dear energy friends, or...
I'll pause it there for a second, give a little bit of reference of what the Joe cell is. And it's an electrolysis device making hydrogen, or a HHO gas or water gas, as well as there's also been reports of transmutations of elements happening in the Joe cell. It's a device invented in, I believe, Australia is where he's from. And this Ahmed Murphy is has nothing to do with Joe cell other than researching it and actually having a working device that he got off of Joe, which is pretty cool and showing that it is a real thing.
As I heard, all these young people, students, and I think a student has nothing to do with the age we have. As we heard now before from Jörg, we are constantly learning and relearning what we have forgotten, or what even our parents or ancestors were not able to push through to the moment we are now in the present. So actually, I will not talk about very new things, but my message will be to capture your attention that water is not that what we think it is. It's much more. We saw now water from the nature point of view, the implosion, the spiraling movement, and I will show you the water from a technical part of the view of a scientist. And in parallel, we will go a little bit more into social consequences. What does all this mean about water? What are all these changes? What have we forgotten in school? What have we forgotten with something which is so important for life? How can someone straighten a river? How can someone pollute water if water is the basis of biology, the basis of life? Are we going crazy? Let's see. The other way. Jules Verne, he was a writer. And this is a long time ago. And this, please, read it. I will read it too. I believe that water will one day be employed as fuel. That hydrogen and oxygen, which constitute it, used singly or together, will furnish an inexhaustible source of heat and light, of an intensity of which coal is not capable. This was written 1874. I think.
Right, so that right there, showing 150 years ago, scientists knew and envisioned how the power of water into fuel with the HHO plasma reactions and technology and science is the future, yet it's 150 years later and we're still talking like that today. These devices need to stop being suppressed, and this science needs to become mainstream and applied and used by us all. And that is going to be the goal of the BERN conference, is applying these breakthrough energy technologies of water, of hydrogen, and of water plasma gas fuel technology. And well, I'm going to be starting to experiment with it a lot more, starting to collect it, as well as starting to interview a lot more guests that are using it and applying it and studying it. And yeah, we're going to develop it.
I think your ears are ringing and your mind is saying, wow, that sounds like today. So let's go about some basics, which is what everyone knows, that water has all these states. So you have clouds, you have water, you have bubbles, you have spirals, you have ice. So it's a wonderful material.
Wow, I just built the most amazing workflow on Monday.com.
You build your own workflow? Why?
What is water? Basically, what we learn at school is that you have an oxygen and you have two hydrogens, and they somehow stick together. And when these things, these little molecules, we call them, when they stick together, because of this structure with the electrons, and some part is negative, some part is positive, so they stick together, they build what we know a liquid water. So what you see in the school books is something like this. It's a Mickey Mouse. I call it a simplified cartoon of a so-called water molecule. Mickey Mouse. People, why are we still learning cartoons at school and at the universities? Who is telling this Disney story to us? Because this destroys nature. Nowadays in the industry, we have huge electrolyzers. Those are devices with different metal plates with plus and minus. You put current in there, and they generate a lot of hydrogen and a lot of oxygen. This is the way we do it in the industry. But there's another way of generating these gases. And here we have George Weissman. Here we have a device also from the US, from Rob Gurley. And here we have the green one I photographed myself in Berlin. This was built by a mathematician. And all these devices, there are hundreds of them, generate a type of gas that I call water gas, because every inventor puts its name on it. One is called Brown's gas. Another guy calls it Ohmasa gas. Another guy calls it oxyhydrogen because it's oxygen and hydrogen, but we don't know how they're sticking together. We don't know how the Mickey Mouse looks like. And some people built water cars with it, like Stanley Meyer in Ohio, US. Or Professor Ruggero Santilli calls it magnegas because he thinks these Mickey Mouse particles stick together magnetically. Some call it hydrinos because it looks like fancy. It's not a big hydrogen, it's a small hydrogen, hydrino, etc. So there are many, many names. There are many names because water is kind of a complicated stuff at the end. If you get this gas and you burn it, it actually produces a flame. And this flame, if you measure the infrared signature, meaning the temperature in naked air, you will measure something between 50 and 130 degrees Celsius. But if you take this burning gas, and please, I'm saying burning because I still belong to the old age of coal.
So really, it's plasma, it's ionized gas that he is referring to when this HHO is ignited or activated. Yeah, I watch Ken Wheeler. He is definitely an OG. I do enjoy his content for the most part. But yes, back to the power of the HHO. And it's all water, and it's water in plasma and gaseous states.
Coal and gasoline and burning hydrocarbons. It's not burning. It's actually a kind of a laser. But let's say burning. If you perform some experiments And on the left of these slides, you have very strong metals that need very high temperatures to melt, to evaporate. For example, tungsten. It needs 3,400 degrees Celsius. But with this, let's call it flame made out of water gas, you just evaporate it. In situ, when you measure that light, that fire, then you measure 217 degrees Celsius. This is impossible. If you take another metal, tantal, which melts a little bit below than wolfram, then you get 400 degrees. What happens if I get a piece of plastic, Teflon, which gets brittle and doesn't work out well with temperature at 400 degrees? You will measure 925 degrees. So it's the upside down. It's the upside down.
Sorry, I have to correct that. That last one there is titanium.
This one. Okay, titan, yes.
With the 10% of hydrocarbon.
Shout out Bob Grenier, of course, sitting watching this live 12 years ago when it was being recorded. And let's hear what Bob Grenier has to say. He actually says a few things throughout this presentation. It's pretty awesome.
So it's actually showing that when you have hydrocarbon in there, it's able to raise the temperature of titanium to a higher degree.
Okay. It's good, it's good. I just want to show you that the water gas, which is coming out of water, how can this gas melt the strongest and hardest metals we have on Earth? Actually, if you think about it, it's impossible. Normal scientists, when they perform their calculations, they know this is not working, but they have it in front of their eyes. No one at the universities knows about this phenomena. Maybe 0.1%. Why? Because it's impossible. This has been measured several times. I measured it myself, but I thought these pictures are very nice because they had a very good camera for doing them. There could be an energy source, something inside of the water gas. It could be that we have charge clusters, which Mr. Ken Shoulders found out in the US, that it is possible to stick negative charges together or positive charges. So if you hopefully didn't miss physics and chemistry classes, what happens if you get a plus and you bring them together? What happens? They repel. What happens if you take a north pole of a magnet and a north pole? What happens? They get away. Yes? But this guy, he's saying, no, you can get trillions of minus little Mickey Mouse and put them in a box. They stick together. So conventional science says that's impossible. But breakthrough science, because there exists too, but you don't learn it at the university at the moment. You have to contact people, because a professor will never teach this in a lecture, because plus and plus must go away. Minus and minus must go away. But this is not the case. Please take consciousness about this, because it's crucial for understanding the properties of water gas. If you get one of these, let's say, turbulent flying pancakes made out of trillions of ions, in this case positive, they could be electrons, they will punch a hole in a thick aluminum plate. Where is that energy coming from? It's a huge energy. Okay, you got the Joe cell. I must be somewhere now. Okay, so that's the cell, that cylinder is this part here, for example, which we see here in the middle. People usually put a connection, so you have a lot of electrical energy going in the cell, and it produces a gas. And usually when you start your car, they get this gas and put it in the intake of the air, where the air goes in and mixed with the gasoline. So you're mixing the gas, the air, and the gasoline. People think that using this, you're burning the benzene in a better way. But if you calculate how much gas is coming out, it's very little. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. So what is happening here? It's just a question. There's another way. You have the same cell here. You produce the gas, let's call it water gas. It comes out of here. And from here, it goes back in a vessel with water and it bubbles. And you collect the Mickey Mouse. You see them here, all the Mickey Mouse? They're playing around with each other. And then this water, you pour it in this part here. And this is like a little bottle with a tube. And you connect it to the vacuum intake of your engine. You have the same effect. And if you calculate how much gas you're taking here, it's so little, so tiny. We're talking about very, very small amounts. And still you have these effects in different types of combustion engines. What's going on here? This is a round, a sphere. It's not a tube anymore. It's more a 3D cell. It's called the Moyo cell. Here is the water charge. You take the water out and put it inside of the cell, and the cell you put it in the car. That's the cell you have in the hand. It looks like this if you open it. You have a center electrode with the minus, and then you have some other tube.
Yeah, so I'm going to try replicating one of these because I've made some very similar-ish style electrolysis experiments so far, and it's pretty simple. Like, it's not that complex to do. So that's going to be my fall project this year, is making one of these Moyo cells.
Oops, and at the outside you have the positive. The positive is now inside of a plastic construction. You will see it when you get it into your hands. It's also possible to use this charged water, which does not burn, but you can convert it into gas. That means electricity goes in and the water turns into gas. And if you take this gas and drive a car and you measure the exhaust, what's coming out of the tailpipe, you will measure 18% volume oxygen. In this air, we have 21. If we have a combustion, the oxygen should disappear like we see here in this car. This is a Porsche Cayenne, normal engine. It has some oxygen because we started it cold, so it wasn't really warmed up. But in this case, we have a surplus of oxygen. So what's going on? And the car is moving, as usual, has power. What do we get from such a, let's call it a cell with electricity and water? We get water gas, we get special water, activated water, structured water, energized water. If you manage to measure the voltage, it's like a battery. You have around 1 to 1.2 volts in this water. And you get minerals at the end of the pot.
Here.
Minerals are created.
Right.
There's another type of gas. Mr. Ruggero Santilli calls it magnet gas because he thinks that the Mickey Mouses, they stick together magnetically. It's not the so-called covalent connection of electrons, electricity sticking. He says that the way he produces his gas, because he has very strong currents, is that the gas will stick magnetically. But this gas, he can put it in a car. So he has this bottle here, and he collects this yellow bottle. He collects the gas in there, takes the bottle, and drives away home. He says that the connection of the electrons, how they stick together to build molecular. He says that these electrons are not points, and this is a false view we teach at universities, that particles are a dot in space, and it's not. It has an extension. So he calculates that these two particles, in this case electrons, which are not able to stick together, he says yes, they can. So he has a theory about that. Okay, So there are scientists working on this possibility. My friend Paul Laviolette too, so he has some ideas about Cooper power and how Cooper powers, which is important for supraconductive materials, that they also follow this mechanism. We did some measurements. That means this cell that you have in the hand gets electricity, a gas comes out. We measured some hydrogen. Usually you should have 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. But here we have different values. We have around 6.5% hydrogen, a lot of oxygen. So this explains why the car was having a surplus of oxygen. Then we have little water, and strangely, we have CO2.
With respect to these frontier models, they're so interesting because it's a form.
So I've asked the persons, where does this CO2 come from? So no one knows yet. No one has investigated this. But water is producing CO2. If you think about plants, about trees, this is natural. Because they use CO2, they use water to build the plants. So it seems that water and electricity is able to produce the CO2. Okay, this is Omasa gas. This is the Japanese guy who also has another type of water gas. And if you do a mass spectra of his water, you see clusters of water. That means the waters are like sticking together, these Mickey Mouse parts. Somehow there's a glue in there that brings them together. And this builds a gas. And this gas has power. That was the gas that was burning the metals, the same gas. When you have electrodes, on one side, on the minus, you have hydrogen, and on the plus, you have oxygen. But you also have something in the middle. There are people that are specialized in collecting what is in the middle. That means when you're working with water, you have to look into the details. Not just think, oh, that's plus, that's minus, here we have oxygen, here we have hydrogen. It's not the case. It's much more complicated. Some person collects these, and those make a loud bang and have a lot of power. And it's a different water gas structure. It's not hydrogen, oxygen as we learned at school. So you see the bubbles? How many shapes of bubbles did you see there? How many types? 10? 12? At least you saw small ones and big ones. There is a difference between a small bubble and a big bubble because of the volume, but also because of the tension. The surface tension of the skin of this bubble. So it's a difference if you feed your car for driving this gas with little bubbles, with middle bubbles, or big bubbles. Why? Because that, at least we learned at school, surfaces can collect charge. So there is a quite big difference if you're using micro bubbles, nano bubbles, or let's say visible bubbles. I will show you, I prefer the nano bubbles. You don't see them, but they're very, very highly charged. There's a person in the US, it's called Mr. Jenkins. He creates a kind of a fog. That means he uses ultrasound and he converts water into fog, like a cloud. And then he puts a little bit benzene vapor in there, very little, between 1% and 3%. And when he does that, he can run a car straight on water. I did these experiments at home, very easy. Get a fog device, create the fog, put some benzene vapors, and burn it. It burns. Burns very smoothly and creates heat, so it's a good fuel for engines. This is an experiment I did in my lab. You have a bottle, a smoothie bottle, because I needed glass, so that was the only one that was clean. And inside, you see the fog. But the fog has been treated with ozone, which is a charge, in this case, a machine for charging air. So I recreated what happens in the heavens. You have the water, and the particles don't fall down because they're charged. The Mickey Mouse, they are hanging around charged, so they don't fall. It's a kind of levitation. So if you do that at home or in your lab, you can collect it. And you see here, this is my mobile, 60 minutes, 47 minutes, 2 hours. I call it the cloud in the bottle. It doesn't settle down. Okay, I did an experiment with the normal vapor, and it settles down, condenses, and disappears. So this is another important detail. The water particles have to be charged in order to perform work. Stanley Meyer did that. He created a machine. This is the cell. And here, the Mickey Mouse, you see, the Mickey Mouse is all over. He also uses it. Now it looks like a frog with the eyes popping out. He wants to symbolize that the oxygen and the hydrogen are being dissociated. We call that when they separate. But it's not the case. But he wrote that in the patents so people would give him the rights for the patent. It's not separating, it's creating water gas. And this is a statement I have to really repeat and repeat, so you know that we're not dealing with oxygen and hydrogen separated, we are dealing with a new kind of water in the gaseous form. It's not a vapor, it's a gas. But it's not a normal gas that follows the Boltzmann statistics, as we learned in physics. It's a special gas. The ideas from Stanley Meyer came from Dr. Pucharish. He had a similar cell and a similar injector for driving cars. And he really explains in length what is happening in his machine. And he discovered it by chance. He developed a machine for hearing people, for people that have a hearing loss. So based on these two electrodes and the frequencies, he found out that these frequencies convert blood, because he was treating blood, into gas. So it was a very, very, very little step. Here's the blue line, a very little step, and it crossed the border 1 millimeter and did it with water. And he found out that this gas is able to move a car. That was before Stanley Meyer. Well, that's to give you an idea, what is water gas? Does it exist? What kind of temperatures? What is it? What could it be? Because we really do not know, because there are several different types of water. So we have several different types of water gas. Please remember, look at the ice crystals. We learned it this morning. No ice crystal is the same. So are we expecting all over the same water gas? No. Okay. Let's now, because this is a homogeneous audience, I won't talk about energy in the physical term. I prefer to talk about vibrations, because vibration is something we feel. You know, you feel the sound, you feel the music, you feel the sun. All those things are vibrations. Not call it energy. Here we have an example how air densities are changing, hit our ears, and we listen to music. Here we have it more realistic as a 3D wave. So please don't believe a wave is a snake going like this. This is for school, for teaching little boys and girls when they are 3. But please, not when they are at school and they are 10, 11, or 12. Teach them the 3D system. This we can play on a mobile. Tell them what's really going on. Show them integrals. Show them 3D waves moving in time and space. Because children accept this. But we adults think that we have to use a simple formula, and that's a wrong path. Here we have a complex picture. It's a water reflection. So light is hitting water, the water is vibrating, and we have this picture here on the right. You see how it moves? He's saying hello to us. That's how they do it. It's a speaker. You have a pot with water. It vibrates, and you shine light on it, and then you take photographs. And what do you see here? Can you compare the pictures? No. Again, we have an issue. I cannot use a formula and find the right frequency for the right picture. Why? Because we have water, which is always different. It will be slightly different. We call this fractal structure. But even the fractal structure that repeats itself always has a little change. Who wakes up in the morning in the same good mood? Let's see who raises the hand. Oh, I'm happy, so I'm not the only one. So when these waves look nice to us and we feel good, what's happening there? What happens when someone is nice? What happens when you like the music? Usually we say, oh, I'm in resonance. I'm in resonance. Okay, that's one word. Another word is coherence. Coherence means we are walking the same path. No, we don't even have to touch it ourselves. Yes, you see when you're walking with your girlfriend or your best friend and, oh, strange, we're doing the same movement. How you feel that? This is coherence. In nature, you see like this. A fish swarm. No scientists know how this works. But it's coherence. So where is the wave? In the brain of the fish? In the water? Where is the wave? But it's there. Because the fish, all the fish together are following the movement. It's very funny, but some physicists found out that water, I'm going to jump this part because it's more for the scientific people. Here again, we have the Mickey Mouse. Yeah? These Mickey Mouse parts come together and build a kind of friendly party. They are in coherence. They like each other. But you know, do you like your neighbor? Maybe the first neighbor. Do you like the third neighbor? You don't know him because far away. Maybe he's nice, but maybe not. I don't know. So you build what we call domains, groups. And especially in water, these groups have 100 nanometer width. Kind of 100 nanometer, they can have 1,000. We are not talking about water clusters, please. It's an energetic, a vibration. It can be one Mickey Mouse and a whole family of Mickey Mouse all swinging in the same vibration. The first neighbor, the second neighbor, the third neighbor, okay? So when that happens, strange things appear in the laboratory. For example, this is just plain water, pure water, very, 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 very high-grade pure water. They get a piece of naphthalene, which is kind of a plastic, steer it in the water, take it out, put it in the water, steer it again, take it out, put it, and then let this water evaporate. At the end, you get a structure, looks like this in the glass. It's water to 99%, but it's solid water, it's like wax. And if you look, you take the microscope, you find a fractal structure. But please, this looks like the universe. This looks like a brain, the brain cells. So I named this, one of these parts here, I named it the water neuron. So there is a brain cell that's built up of water. So water builds streets, communications. Okay? This was studied with an atomic microscope force. That's a dip that goes on the surface and checks the height. So the yellow color means it's kind of high, and the blue color means it's flat. So it's kind of looking from the top, scanning the region. This is a so-called water neuron. Never heard about it. Because it's kind of a solid, but it's not liquid. It's like wax. If you go further and study that, chemists are already checking the structures. So they found out that they're made out of different combinations of hydrogen and oxygen. Let's go now a step higher. So these wax parts, these domains, these coherent blocks of water are building structures by themselves. And funny, these structures are spirals, a helix. So what was first, the DNA with the proteins or the water that's interstitial between the proteins? Because as everyone should know, DNA does not work without water. The water has to be in between the proteins. If not, it does have no structure. So what was first in the helical structure? The proteins, the DNA, or the water? I say the water, the domains that stick together and build these forces. You can check the surface and there is a voltage. So with this tip, you can go over these neurons and over these clusters or structures, and you will see a voltage. Because these little neighbors who stick together are polarized. And the interesting thing is, when something is polarized, they stick to the others. Please check this picture. You will see a familiar structure. It's a six-fold symmetry. You see? Where did we see this? Snowflakes. Right. Now we know where they come from. Now we know why they cannot be so similar, because these little balls here, there are 100 nanometer, 102 nanometers, 110, 120, 124, and so on. They come and go because water is moving. Half of this cup of water, oh, thanks, I remember I had to drink. Half of this cup of water is in this state. Half of it at room temperature. Imagine praying, good vibrations, nice nature, etc. How much of these domains, of these neighborhoods will we have? Probably more than just half. Okay, this is a cell. A cell has an inner part and an outer part. And the membrane keeps the inner part together. You can measure a voltage. It's usually minus. And depending on the voltage, like here, you have minus 50, minus 100 with millivolts. That's a very good, healthy cell. If it goes further to 0 and plus, you are dead. Okay? And if you reach 350, like here, which is crazy, is because this person was drinking a special water, a so-called charged water. It really affects your body, because all these neighbors, all these Mickey Mouse that come together in the 100 nanometer, all these friends, if you have more of them, all your body cells will be in coherence. What happens if you are in coherence and you wake up in the morning? Wow, what a great day. And everyone is envious because they see you are happy and it's raining and shitty weather. Yeah? Yes. Because it's a state of mind. Because we learn that the water neurons, the energy which puts these particles together, which is just vibration, can put things in a way that they are coherent. And when we are coherent, everything moves. There is no resistance. This is not only for psychology, and it's not only for learning things, and for earning money, it's for everything in this universe. If things are coherent, if there is harmony, there is no resistance. If there is no resistance, everything is open. And this is a very, very easy experiment. Every doctor knows this. They know about this. And biologists. So for the cells, we go back now to technology, the machine with the plates and the plus and minus creating this water gas. What do we learn about this? We learn that the design of the device is important, the geometry. We learn that the power supply, the way the vibrations reach the water, we call it frequency in physics, we call it energy, whatever, but the way that goes into the cell has an influence. A lot of operating conditions, the pulsing, do you have a pause between? How do you put the pulse in there? All that influences the quality of the gas that you get. let's see what has happened in science. There's been a lot of publications, but not from well-known universities about HHO. If you search for scientific papers about HHO gas, you will find Egypt University, Kazakhstan University, and so on. No Cambridge, no MIT, no Caltech, nothing dedicated to using this gas in burning combustion engines. I have a list of them here just to show you that they exist.
Please turn it back.
Yes. Don't worry, we'll be online, so. Let's have an example today. Everyone is talking about hydrogen cars, electric cars, gasoline cars, diesel cars, whatever. There's a discussion ongoing. It's a matter of fact that hydrogen cars that produce with this hydrogen electricity, we call this fuel cell technology, are very efficient. It's a matter of fact. They're very, very efficient. This line here, the blue line. You see energy efficiency, you see the range. Here's the normal gasoline engine, here's the normal battery car, whoop, you know, batteries, you know how batteries work. Oh, hello, yeah, boom. This is battery. Now, everyone knows this because they have a short possibility for supplying energy. But it's not the case with hydrogen and fuel cells. And this is why we are not driving these cars. Very easy. I just checked the numbers in Germany. We only have, they're expensive, 80,000 euros. We only have 71 fuel stations for hydrogen. And we only have around 380 hydrogen cars running around. So, well, I calculated the price. So you can drive 750 kilometers paying 60 euros. It's almost like gasoline, depending on the country. Okay, as this is the social part of my talk, what happens in the world with energy consumption? Because at the end, I want to tell you what can we do with these, let's say, new energies. So the friends here that were working for petrol or gas industry will get a hint now. Actually, they are my friends. They are our friends because we are all living on the same planet. China, US, India are burning fossil fuels at a rate which is amazing. It's crazy. We are part of the business. Oops, sorry, that was too quick. But let's leave it there. The primary energy consumption, here's 1994, and here we have 2018, is going up at a rocket speed. Of course, we are implementing high efficiency in burning things and in producing electricity. We are introducing solar cell wind energy. But people, be aware, the energy consumption based on hydrocarbons is stepping in a high rate, is going through the ceiling. Be aware about this. 2040, we will double. I don't know what will happen here. These figures are from a so-called British Petroleum Statistical Review, a wonderful document for people that are interested in energy consumption. If you check this paper, it's kind of thick. The so-called chief economist, this person here, Spencer Dale, wrote the following. At a time when society is increasing its demand for an accelerated transition to a low-carbon energy system, the energy data for 2018 paint a worrying picture, with both energy demand and carbon emissions growing at the fastest rate seen for years. This is British Petroleum. Let's say the gangsters, but they are not, because they are supplying the energy we need. But this chief economist is stating this. Now you understand all these children, Future for Friday, and all these people getting crazy. Now you understand. Of course, they haven't read this, but they know it's in the air. So energy supply in the context of growing global demand is an important issue. It cannot be solved by technology alone. Please, cold fusion, free energy won't solve the issue. Don't stick just to one part. Let's think holistically. Let's get into coherence of thoughts and possibilities. And you will see what you have. You have economical, energy must be affordable. Political, energy dependence on other countries. We have to take care about that. Ethically motivated, growing energy demand for global prosperity. Scientifical, disrupting views, forcing the discovery and use of new energy sources has to be implemented. Okay? This is what we contribute to energy. We cannot just force one, let's say, type of thought, like cold fusion or solar energy or wind energy. It's not that easy, because you will have regions without wind, you will have regions with very little sun, and so on, and different political constellations. So in basic research for generating energies, if we just check the sun, this is a statement for you to have an idea what nature does. A matter of fact, the amount of energy that radiates from the sun to the earth during an hour, just 1 hour, corresponds to the amount of energy that is consumed by the entire human race in the course of a year. This is mind-boggling. Just 1 hour sun. If we could collect all that energy, we would feed the entire population of this earth for 1 year with energy. So there are different things you can do here. You can convert liquids, you can convert water with CO2, like the plants do, into diesel. It's possible. There is a process here.
And we're back. The team is looking down the barrel of a 455 meeting.
Can they turn it around and make this meeting an even
Ball
and to give you an idea about standard energy, let's say, how much energy I can put into this box here, to give you a feeling what that means. If you get diesel, you have 1 cubic meter of diesel, 1 meter, 1 meter, 1 meter. You will store in that something like 10 megawatts hour of energy, which is the energy a family uses an entire year. If efficiencies, this is in Europe, not in the US, or some other places. So if this room here, this 1 meter, 1 meter, 1 meter is full of diesel. If you do the same thing with petroleum gas, you will need 4 meters. If you use hydrogen gas at a certain pressure, you will need 6 meters. If you use lithium-ion batteries, oh, you will need 30 cubic meters. It's just to give you an idea. If you use air, compressed air, you will need 3.5 kilometers. If you pump water on top of the mountain, let it fall down and collect the energy, you will need 14,000 cubic meters. And now let's take the first line. If you take a so-called hydrogas catalyst, which is a special activated gas, you will only need 0.3 cubic meters. That means 33 liters. We still do not know where this energy comes from. I've seen these cars, I've driven these cars. These cars drive with very little of this water, between 2,000 and 6,000 kilometers. This gives an idea about the possibilities in context of energy, because for us, 10 megawatts doesn't say anything. But if you have these cubics, now all this diesel, and you see you have 33 liters of water, special water, and it has the same energy content. This is amazing. Another topic we had here, low energy nuclear reactions. What is the good thing about this? The energy created there is not the radioactive like we have in atomic power stations. There is no nuclear meltdown. There is no huge amounts of waste we have to dispose. There is no threat to global warming, and it's only using water and certain metals. What are the consequences of such energies, of such, let's say, disrupting ideas, which we do not learn at school and at the university, for whatever reason? The world could invest in discovering how these new energy systems work, while finding ways to introduce the discovered energy source without causing too much economic damage. To deliver the growing world's energy demand, and we saw that curve going through the ceiling, that cannot be supplied by carbon or atomic technology anymore. I urge engineers, journalists, writers, to think about these words. Because it's a moment has come when we need to talk about this. Mahatma Gandhi said in his good time, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. You must be active, even in your mind, because we learned that the coherence that's connected to the water can connect to a neighbor and another neighbor, and all these connections, even if it's only 50%, like in this glass of water. If it's only 50%, it's already half full. And this is a step forward. And water is all over in these kinds of technologies. And it's not being studied by mainstream, which is a pity. And we need
Much love.
thoroughly to convince people
Road trip with me.
that water is not only for washing your hands or cooking a cup of tea. Water is something else. It's a present, a big present that came from the heavens above. Now, we read whatever, let's say, philosophical book, religious book, there's always a chapter talking about water. What did those ancient people knew about water? I believe they built the pyramids using water, because everything floats in water. So they did something with water. I believe.
I am here live. This is live. This is not pre-recorded. Let's Bright. And I've been setting up one of my little experiments in the background, a couple of Keshi coils just plugged in there, and they are producing some hydrogen live on air. We are trying to figure out exactly what he's talking about and replicate it. We're about an hour in, and there's about 15 minutes left in this presentation. I'm going to play a little bit more of another global breakthrough energy movement video after this here, and we'll probably keep it just under 2 hours, as I don't want to completely ruin my daytime routine that I've gotten into while working and be up all night. So yeah, hope you're enjoying this, and that is the goal, is to take these experiments to the next level and start applying them and get us some hydrogen water HHO cars going.
Life is being created every millisecond at this moment.
They drank water and got the power to build pyramids.
Yes, for example, yes, important. Yeah, if you don't drink water, the muscles won't work, and then you cannot build a pyramid. Well, with this last word from Mr. Gandhi, I finished my talk. I wanted to give a little, I know I'm a little bit early, because I wanted to give a chance to the people that, for example, hold the Joe cell in their hand. And you must know that this Joe cell was suppressed. The short story is that Joe, yes, just to show it, and maybe, thank you. The man that designed this, he thought, oh, I will create hydrogen, oxygen, use an engine, burn it, and let's see what happens. But while he was performing these experiments, what happened? The engine had no gasoline, but the engine was moving, coughing. So he did some adjustment adjustments, and the engine moved, and he drove around. Joe, of course, doesn't know what's going on in here. Maybe he knows now, or he has an idea, but he started to give this to friends. It's the so-called coherence. My neighbor, my good friend. So I think he was by friend number 6 when he received a visit. He said, little boy, stop doing that. That's why every time something very...
Yeah, so right there, another documentation of you make too many water cars, you get a visit by someone telling you to stop.
Very simple. As we heard, nature. This is a nature product. Very simple devices manage to reach the public domain, depending on how disruptive they are. The powers to be, which control the way the economics move, are, of course, afraid of it. But if in schools, universities, etc., we talk about it openly, and we tell our physics teachers in the face, hey, I don't want Mickey Mouse at my physics. Mickey Mouse is for Disneyland when I was 4 years old. If that changes, those people that are in the power to be, they will have a much deeper understanding, because those will be the first ones to implement turbines, engines, and so on, because those are the engineers, and they're well paid, but they don't understand what they're doing. Oh, we learned today, if you want to move correctly, move backwards. This is a very cheap thing. It works in any car. I'm not selling it because I'm not the business guy. Inside you have the water, and inside you have 4 tubes. You have a little battery. The battery is to keep the polarization, which is around 1 volt. It can be a used battery. It doesn't need to be a new battery. It stays there till it gets destroyed. You don't need to change it. And this tube, it looks like a tube, but nothing comes out. It's blocked. It's blocked here. So if something comes out, it must be smaller than hydrogen. And it cannot be the Mickey Mouse, because you know the Mickey Mouse with the 2 big ears is not able to go through any little tiny hole. So this is something else. And Joe knew about it. And this technology has been copied several times, but never reached an industrial level, because engineers do not know about it. Not only because it has been suppressed, it's because their minds cannot conceive such simple thing. One explanation is that the Joe cell collects particles, concentrates them, and puts them back into the car, into the metals of the car. And this changes the way the car moves. It feels lighter. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that the little tiny coherent parts in here get out, combine with air and gasoline, and increment the power of the combustion. But as cars are designed for heat, they are, of course, in a wrong setting. That means if you want to use this in a proper way, you have to change timing, you have to change the compute of the car, and the car has to learn the new characteristics. If you do that and do that correctly, you will see millage improvement. And you will feel something very strange, which is called levitation, which is kind of weird when you're driving, because it's freaky when you have to stick to the ground, but sometimes you're not that heavy. So engineers still have to refine this. Okay, thanks a lot. I give 5 minutes for questions maybe, or great, perfect, thank you, thanks a lot, Prost.
Okay. Thank you very much. I was wondering, do you have any suggestion about what to show to fellow technical-minded people in order to get them over that first hump of cynicism and criticism?
Yes, actually, I've done that. I've approached chemists, professors, and so on, and I show them pictures and videos of burning water. And a chemist knows that water is oxidized, so that means it has burnt. It cannot burn further. And this nice professor watched this video and said, I cannot believe this. And I said, I will show it to you. So we got this device and we showed him how water was burning, and he thought to think about it. And then I said, do you know what's Brown's gas? He said, no, never heard about it. So I showed him some pictures, and then he was thinking and said, strange, I'm now 64 and never heard about that. And then we went to his colleagues and other, never heard about it. So the problem is an issue of communication and of information.
But could I build a system that makes water burn?
Yes,
How?
easy. You can take the Jenkins system.
Okay.
Then you need petrol, but not that much, just between 1% and 3%.
Okay. Yeah.
And fog, but fog is microns. So better is if you design a system with nano water particles or gas, and then you can burn it directly.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not burning; it's releasing the vibrations, because it's not that hot. It's something different. It's not heat. Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Because we'll have a Q&A after the panel discussion.
But it's good now because the minds are working and.
See, it's actually potentially an answer to a question you gave, in fact, two questions. One is the water clusters in Dr. Royshin and Mars's analysis of its gas. They found like buckyball structures, and these could have no charge and therefore be dense form of water that has no charge, so it doesn't connect to each other, so it forms a gas.
The charge is inside.
Yeah, the charge is inside, but
the charge is shielded.
Yeah,
is shielded, and the question will be: do we have high density charge clusters inside? Which is not the normal physics chemistry. The buckyball structure has a p orbital outside, the p orbital inside, and the inside particles you cannot see them from outside. So interesting would be to know if inside of the buckyballs, I know there are endohedral buckyballs that you can put things in it, like a container.
Yeah.
If you put high charge density clusters, there you have it.
Yeah. Then the other one is how does the carbon form? You can take a proton, a neutrino, and oxygen 16 times 2 that goes to carbon and neon 22. Add another oxygen 16, and you get the argon that you also saw in your gas.
Probably, yes. And it's boggling the amount of carbon that's coming. We know that water has carbon because we use creek water from nature. We don't put chemicals. Creek water has carbon because it flows in the river. It captures whatever, and that part is in there. But this water has been reused, I don't know, hundreds of times. So where is the carbon coming from? Thanks. Okay. Good idea.
Ambition is on the inside. You can't.
Sorry for the stupid commercials. I'll be getting YouTube Premium sometime soon.
Please go ahead. Yes.
Thank you very much.
We have so 3 minutes.
Okay, very quick. You talk about negative charge particles. In my opinion, negative charge is absolute nonsense from the point of language. To charge something means to increase, to add to. To add to by subtraction is nonsense. So the very concept of negative charge is a fiction. It does not exist. So I contend that the whole scientific community and the whole world is hypnotized with a lie.
It's true. It's true.
The right concept of particle.
I'm pausing it there because this is actually a very crucial point, and that electricity, like the plus and the negative, it's like they're inversed. And really, the negative is the one that's adding, and the positive one is the one that's subtracting and losing from, especially in an anode reaction, where the metal's literally deteriorating on the positive side, and the negative side, it grows a shell, and that's where you're also getting your hydrogen from. And yeah, so I guess I'll let this last minute play out. And another big part of where it's monopole charges that you're able to cluster together into those high questions. One of the people was Bob Green. You're asking questions, but maybe you're talking about this guy here.
atom is cell has nothing to do with official scientific concepts. So dealing with those concepts, you cannot explain any phenomenon.
It's true. Actually, to help, thanks for the question. The hard density charge clusters, we said minus and minus come together, which is not, if we talk about charge, is not possible. But it's possible because we measure this. It doesn't matter if this huge amount of charges are negative or positive, what we call negative and positive in science. It doesn't matter. For us, no, but it doesn't matter. So they exist or don't exist, we don't need to argue because they are not important. It is not important to have a plus and a minus. It's not important to have the bipolar, like Schauberger said, and we say today polarity. It's not important for the coherence, for the way neighbors work together, because we learn that even if you say they are negative and they cannot come together, they come together. But minus and positive is not important anymore. It's just a way of thinking in the so-called normal rational brain that we need polarities. High pressure, low pressure. High temperature, low temperature. Minus particle, minus electricity, plus electricity. These are just concepts. But if you really want to go to the vibrational part, the vibration, who has seen a negative vibration? Well, you know what I mean. But the vibration itself has no minus and no positive. So I agree. It's just a model, the Mickey Mouse with the ears. Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, so that is the end of that presentation on Global Breakthrough Energy Movement YouTube channel. Guess I should probably post that for everybody. Fairly, whoops. Oh. Bang. Sorry, 1 minute. Never works out the right way. Okay, stop screen share, start screen share. Next one, Mark Leclerc and Maury B. King discussing cavitation and these water crystals formations that they make during the water cavitation. Extremely fascinating stuff here. Crucial, what I believe, in part of the transmutation process of alchemy is this cavitation ability and what Mark Leclerc has discovered.
2004, I was doing machining with that jet that you saw. Material, I always, like Murray says, always enjoy talking.
I'm going to the party. He started writing.
And if you look carefully in the center, you can actually see a core coming down through the bubble. That's a liquid core of water. That's a steam bubble. It's approximately 1 millimeter in diameter. And that produces an asymmetric collapse, which launches a jet towards the surface. So at any rate, Murray, could you hit the next slide?
Everybody read it quick.
Forming incredibly high pressures that are formed in cavitation that can occur during the collapse can go over 500,000 psi. And this crystal that I discovered is actually an equilateral triangle subunit. So it's not a hexagon pattern like you see with ices. It's not ice. And it's actually covalently linked along the axis with OH bonds, a sequence of those. And in the plane, it's actually linked with the hydrogen bonds. So the thing is very strong in the axial direction, but weaker in the transverse direction. So it can actually peel apart, kind of like spaghetti, with like a bundle of spaghetti. The crystal typically would exhibit hexagonal cross sections, but some of the ones that I saw were equilateral triangles, and that's what led me to the conclusion on the molecular structure. When you work out the numbers on this, it turns out this is dense as steel. It's got a specific gravity around 5.5, depending on the lengths of the bonds and the compression. And so really the crystal is the crux of what led to the next discovery, which when I was in the process of doing the machining, I began to notice that long trenches were appearing on the material on the surface that I was using to collapse the cavitation bubble next to. And after only a few minutes of doing the machining,
See, so what's so crucial to this is I also believe he's describing what a lot of what we see in both the work that Bob Grenier himself is reviewing and doing, as well as John Hutchinson's work. And what he describes, I also kind of observe on some of my own anode and cathode samples and electrolysis, and thus its overall importance, and how Mark Leclerc here has been able to take it to a whole other next level of science in developing this and figuring out what's happening and how they're turning water into a high pressure crystal during cavitation. Very, very important part here.
I take these things out of the water and there's no apparent cause and effect why they should have appeared, but yet there they were. And so under examination under the microscope, once again, you could see that these things were very symmetric. They had half hexagonal bottoms to the trench. And so later on, I was able to conclude that it was the water crystal carving the trench with the crystal halfway into the page. And that's why you see a half hexagonal cross-section to the trench. So it occurs to me that, this thing was producing heat. And so back in 2009, we received a grant from Hub Laboratories and we produced a cavitation hot water heater. And the goal of this project was actually to demonstrate that 0-point energy was actually the responsible driving mechanism for producing heat in cavitation-related experiments where excess energy had been seen, particularly in the ones where they hadn't seen radioactive release. And so the result is that cavitation was really the driver behind quite a few of the cold fusion processes, in my opinion, but I'll get to more about that later. So yeah, next slide, Murray.
Huge information right here.
Okay. So yeah, we ran these experiments back in 2009, and that's kind of what I'm going to go through with the presentation. You'll be seeing various results, both radioactivity, you'll be able to see radioactive tracks in polystyrene plastic. You'll see Geiger counter data. You'll also see some other pretty amazing things too, like patches of diamond that appeared on the core. And these are all things I'll touch on in the presentation.
Patches of diamond.
Let's go right to the next slide, Murray. That shows me something beyond the abstract. Okay, and it'll be up here in a second. So in a summary, that's what we've done is we've taken this water crystal and harnessed it to be able to produce energy. And I produced a lot of these trenches by trying to pack as many attractive sharp edges on metal as I could into the core, because there's an electrostatic attraction between the water crystal and the surface, which I'll get to later. Yeah, there's a little background there. I see it now. Okay, so Nanospire, we started back in the beginning of January 2002, and actually slightly before that, it was a Foresight Institute conference back in Santa Clara. And I was surrounded by the venture capitalists that convinced me that I should start a company harnessing cavitation reentrant jets. So in the process now, we've received, that says 7 grants. We're actually up to about 9 grants that we've won now. We won the top award in nanotechnology in the world, actually, back in 2003. And I was flown to Tokyo to present in front of a crowd of about 50,000 people. And I managed to beat out the likes of all the Japanese trading companies and quite a few other premier groups in nanotechnology. So we were really pleased about that. And then also want to point out that we've got 4 issued patents. The patents are extremely broad. They've got a lot of claims, and they really cover a lot of territory in terms of what you can use reentrant jets harnessed in different ways. I guess I'd want to put out the common thread in all of them is I've created a new prime mover in being able to harness the reentrant jets. Yeah, that's my smiling face on the top slide there, and Serge Levitt, my executive vice president, down below. And I guess I'll start by telling you a bit about Serge's background, because you've heard some about mine. Serge is the founder of a cavitation processing company called 5 Star Technologies. They went on to spin off another company named Aristine. And they were into cavitation nanophase material production. And Serge was actually one of my former bosses. I consulted the 5-star back close to 20 years ago. And so Serge and I have worked together now for close to 20 years. And Serge really is one of the most knowledgeable people in cavitation in the world, in my opinion, you know, besides some of the other people that we work with. And he's a real asset to Nanospire. Also want to point out that he was a co-discoverer of, during the fusion experiment too, that we were actually trying to show that there really wasn't that much fusion going on during the 0-point energy release, but it turns out there was. So it was a serendipitous discovery. I just want to point out that, you know, Serge is right there with me. We were testing the thing out, and, you know, we'll get back to what ends up happening in the results, but it's pretty fantastic. Then give you a little more background about myself. Like Murray pointed out, I'm a hydrodynamicist, fluid dynamics by training, thermodynamics, heat transfer. Also studied quite a bit of atomic physics, and my master's degree was in nuclear engineering. I studied the fouling of nuclear steam generators at Alden Research Laboratory, where it's actually the third oldest hydrodynamic research facility in the United States, founded back in the Civil War. My former advisor back there during my master's was Mahadvan Padmanabhan. I'd like to point out, and we're pretty honored to be able to say that Padu, which is his nickname, Padu had just won the hydraulic medal, which is the top award in fluid mechanics and civil engineering. Next slide, please. So yeah, Murray, you can just kind of like advance them in advance for me like that because of the lag, and that'll work out. Okay. So I'm not going to spend that much time on them unless I really need to.
Yeah, we'll be of like minds.
Right. Yeah, I also want to point out that I worked in the fluid mechanics group at Lockheed Missiles and Space Company in Sunnyvale, California. I was there for 4 years, from 1989 through 1993. Worked on cavitation issues surrounding the.
All right. So right there, Mark saying, admitting how he's in the military industrial complex and given his military history. So another reason why this technology is not in the open is it's all been taken into the military. But at least he's giving us this presentation and sharing his discoveries with us. And that's why we are listening to it, so we can apply it to ourselves.
Launch of the Trident 1 and 2 nuclear missiles out of the submarines. I managed to win every award that Lockheed had to offer. I had commendations from the Navy, commendations from Lockheed. I managed to solve some problems that were long-standing, that had gone on for close to 45 years, that a very large community of hydrodynamicists weren't able to solve. So that's why I ended up winning the commendations. I really began to focus hard on cavitation after Lockheed. Then I also worked for a rotor stator company that I produced a cavitating rotor stator just about the same time as Griggs was putting out the hydrosonic pump. Only a few months later, I'd filed a very similar patent, but focused on producing nanophase dispersions rather than heat, but both cavitating rotor stators, and both filed almost within a month of each other back in 1994. So, Murray, can you actually see the next slide yet, or?
What is cavitation?
What is cavitation?
Yeah, that's what's on the slide right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it hasn't come up yet, so I'll just give it a second. In fact, you know what? I'm going to bring up my presentation on my end so I can actually see it and talk to it while we wait anyway. Let me see. So the next slide is actually the cavitation reentrant jet patent slide. Right. Is that what you said?
It's the Larry Crumb's photo and the wiki photo of the cavitation collapsing bubble launching the reentrant jet.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can see that on my side because I've got the PowerPoint here for me to look at anyway, so I'll know which slide we're talking about until it comes up. Yeah, let me point out exactly what's going on here, because this process is really key. With cavitation, it's nothing more than a boiling phenomenon. Cavitation is another word for boiling. So what you're doing is you're forming the boiling point, but at room temperature by using very high pressure drop typically. Now, these cavitation bubbles can vary in character quite a lot from the boiling of a bubble that you would see in a teapot to the type that are formed by a laser, where they're very highly evacuated and have very little water vapor on the inside of them. They're very dry. And that makes a big difference in terms of the collapse mechanics, because there's a lot of vapor in that bubble. It acts like a spring. When it goes to collapse, it can soften the collapse. So cavitation then has very little water vapor inside the bubble. It typically forms, room temperature. It's not so saturated. Those collapse very violently, and the interface of the bubble is actually moving at the speed of sound of the liquid, which for water, that's pretty fast. It's 1,500 meters per second. All right, and so the jet is also moving at up to 1,500 meters per second. That's the top speed for this thing. So the Mach 4 that I refer to is actually the equivalent speed in air, so that's a bit of a misnomer. Just want to point that out. Now, if this bubble collapses within 6 fully expanded bubble diameters of a surface, it'll cause the bubble to collapse asymmetrically. That's what you're seeing on the bottom. And the bubble, as it tries to pull away from the plate, is being slowed down on the side closest to the plate, but not on the opposite side. So the result is the bubble turns itself inside out like a torus, and then launches the reentrant jet down through the core. So the water is being pulled down through the center of the bubble. And the result is that the cavitation bubble is a way of being able to create a high-speed liquid jet. And my insight was that if I had a flat plate beneath the bubble, then the jet would always go 90 degrees towards the plate. I placed a hole there, and the jet passes through the hole, and now I've got a aimed cavitation reentrant jet that I can do things with, like do machining, that sort of thing. So you can move to the next slide, Murray.
Okay.
Okay. I'll pop it over on this one too. Let me see.
Yeah, you have your own. Just keep going.
Yeah, I'll just keep going. Okay. So now you see the cavitation collapse sequence. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now I basically have 2 classes of patents. One which I call the orifice patents, and the other the double bubble patents. Primary difference is I'm using a plate to slow down the collapse of the bubble on the orifice style patents. And the double bubble patents, I'm using another cavitation bubble that's collapsing in close proximity to aim the jet coming out of the other cavitation bubble. So they each have their kind of pros and cons in terms of doing nanotechnology. And, like the one with the double bubble, you can actually place that in some very tight places, do machining in 6 degrees of freedom. Gives you a lot of flexibility. The orifice patent protects whatever the workpiece is against the implosion shock wave, which is about 100 bars of pressure, so it's pretty substantial. So the orifice patent is typically what I've used the most in terms of my research. I'll aim that jet down through a tube and I'll produce nanophase dispersions, that sort of thing. Next slide, Murray.
Okay. Product schematic.
Okay. Right. So now you can actually see some renditions of what I'm talking about. On the left, you can see that I'm using a lens to focus the light, and right where the focus is, that's going to precisely place the center of that collapsing cavitation bubble. So when I hit it with the pulse of the laser, it vaporizes right there in the center. It suddenly expands and then collapses. And as it collapses, it launches the jet down through the hole towards the workpiece. And then you can also see the double bubble version of that. I can actually sequence the formation of those 2 bubbles so they can be, in phase, out of phase. Got a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to place that. I can also do it with one laser and generate 2 bubbles with beam splitters. Next slide, please.
Eve to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe.
Reentrant jet micro nanofabrication.
Right. So that kind of gives you a background in terms of the space that Serge and I come out of. I mean, we were primarily nanotechnologists seeking to produce nanophase particles to be able to produce, both bottom-up and top-down fabrication technology to be able to, chew away holes, drill channels, that sort of thing, or actually do welding. And I've welded silicon powder to silicon wafers through impact, even from 3 inches away underwater is able to hit the silicon with enough velocity to cause the two to fuse. So this gives you some general idea of kind of where we came out of. Fusion for us, really, it was a kind of a tangential move, but because it fell within our general expertise of cavitation, that's why we picked up on it. And for quite a few years, too, I've noticed a lot of, shall we say, irregularities in terms.
So here we have a Mark Leclerc discussing how they've gotten into cold fusion, low energy nuclear reaction fusion through cavitation, as well as 0-point energy production through this cavitation, and researched it through the military, and then his own developing it through his private industry. And these are key parts of this presentation.
In terms of excess energy with cavitating systems, I'd seen a lot of them reported, and I just want to point out that we don't claim to be the first to produce cavitation fusion. It's been produced by others for probably decades, and it'd almost be difficult to say who really was the first. Okay, so I just want to point that out. Our goal here was doing the nanofabrication, and then the fusion and the crystal and all the other discoveries came up along the way, but really kind of threw a wrench in the works. So they had to revisit all of that to be able to get control of it again, to do nanofabrication. Okay, next slide.
Micro hole drilling.
Yeah, this is an example of some of the work that we did now. We were pretty lucky that we teamed up with the top nanotechnology university in the world, which is Albany SUNY, back in Albany, New York. And they've set up a consortia there at Albany that consists of about 20,000 members, a few thousand companies that are involved. Some of the notables include like IBM, Tokyo Electron, Applied Materials. And what they're doing is they've got MEMS fabs up there. I mean, they're teaching nanotechnology courses, degrees. We were one of the first startups that they actually teamed up with. And we did a New York State Energy Research and Development Authority grant together. And we did some machining. It was a repeat of some stuff that I had done previously with the Maine Technology Institute. And we wanted to see if we could gain control of this process to produce small holes in the zirconia disc for amperometric oxygen sensors. So what you actually see there are some examples of some of the very first cavitation machining that's ever been done. The hole on the left is only 20 microns in diameter. And you can actually see a little bit of the hexagonal pattern from a crystal impact on that one. Just want to point it out. The center picture is actually firing the laser through the moving free surface. I later on moved the lens into the water to get better resolution. And I went from my initial results were roughly a quarter of a degree standard deviation with about a 1 1/4 degree accuracy, but that improved considerably to about 0.08 of a degree when we finally did the New York State Development Authority machining. So if you look at the very bottom image there, that's a sequence of pits, about 200 of them, each of them about 7 microns in diameter. So the wonder in the line there is just the slop in the bearing stage that was used to move the workpiece. You can advance the next slide, please.
Nanomaterials processing.
Okay, so that's an example of what we're talking about. The diagram on the left, I'm creating the cavitation bubble in the chamber. I'm shooting the jet down through the narrow bore below that, and then I introduce whatever I'm going to mill in through the side ports. So it's a very simple device, but has tremendous flexibility and high uniformity. I mean, it's just amazing the results that we've gotten. I'm showing some of that on the right. That's actually zinc oxide, which I'd knocked down to an average size of 2.8 nanometer particle size. So there's only approximately 7 or 8 atoms in diameter the particles were after processing. And just to point out, this is used in all the various industries that you see listed there. So sure, manufacturing with cavitation has been around for a long time, actually, but this is the latest mousetrap, and it's pretty much poised to dominate the high shear market. Next slide, please.
Nanospire grants.
Okay, so that's an example of all the various grants we've done. On the bottom, you can actually see we started off with Maine Technology Institute grants. And really, the very first one was a grant that was sponsored by the Maine Space Grant Consortium, which is part of NASA. And I was flown to NASA Ames in Silicon Valley, and I gave a presentation on my cavitation and original life theory. And it was really well received, and I ended up launching Nanospire. Pretty much that was the point right there. That was in July 2001, and I came back and did the Foresight Conference later on that fall, also in Silicon Valley. So that was kind of the beginning point. Then I did a series of grant application Sea grants with the Maine Technology Institute, because here in the state of Maine, we're really well supported in terms of startups. And, from the legislature, they endowed the Maine Technology Institute to give out everything from small grants to pretty large development grants as well. So it's been instrumental in getting the company off the ground. I'd like to thank the Maine Technology Institute. And then also, you can see that the New York State grant that we did, the nanofabrication. And by the way, I want to point out that the professors that were associated with that, particularly Eric Eisenbraun, is a real believer in terms of what happened. I mean, this crystal was causing all sorts of crazy behavior because it has an electrostatic charge on it. The crystal is very highly charged. It's mostly positively charged. And it had a mind of its own. And, we'd be sitting there trying to put a hole in the center of an object, and instead it would carve a trench around the outer perimeter of the thing. So Eric is a real supporter, and he knows that the Leclerc effect is quite real because he's seen it for himself. And so the Albany Nanotech Group, I can tell you, they're real highly regarded throughout the world in terms of prestige for nanotechnology. And these guys are willing to be able to put their name behind what we saw. So, to some degree, they're also, they're the first professors to actually ever see the Leclerc effect at work. Just want to point that out. So thank you for their support too. And then I also did another MTI grant, which was just to prepare for a SBIR that we applied for. And then also the grant that we did with Hub Laboratories, that was back in 2009. I want to point that out. That was actually very instrumental in terms of launching this entire thing because, that got the whole process going, but it didn't end up so well in some regards, which I'll get to later. But there were some bad things that happened during that experiment, which I'll get to beyond the fusion itself. Then also I want to point out that last fall I get to present as an invited speaker to the water conference. It was actually called the Physics, Chemistry, and Biology of Water. And I covered a lot of the same material, which is in these slides, but I've expanded it dramatically. But I'm going to repeat some of the slides I gave at that presentation as well, because they're relevant and I think you'll find interesting. Next slide, please.
Cavitation, erosion, and fusion.
Okay, so in the process of doing cavitation machining, the big question comes up, how deep is the hole going to be if you know the characteristics of the jet? How deep is the hole going to be depending on the material properties? Now, it seems like that might be a trivial thing to solve, but it turns out that people have been trying to investigate that phenomenon and come up with a general equation that's applicable to all materials for about the past 100 years, starting with Lord Kelvin. And they've all been highly unsuccessful. I mean, most of these equations are good for narrow ranges of certain materials, but not generally applicable. I developed an equation that predicts cavitation erosion incredibly accurately for all materials. And in the process of doing that, I came up with the insight that there's a very thin layer right at the impact where the jet, which is shown in blue on the left, strikes the material. And the red zone is a zone where van der Waals repulsion goes crazy. I mean, it goes up with the 6th power of the separation distance. So when you begin to squeeze a material like that, it turned out that there was actually a large component that was due to van der Waals repulsion. So I wrote an equation which includes the effect of the repulsion energy, and then behind that, it treats it with a more classical impact equation approach that's used in mechanical engineering. And by combining the two of those, the quantum part of it from the repulsion, and then the more classical approach, I was able to derive a general equation that fit 22 different materials that were determined by the American Society of Testing Materials. Next slide, please.
Building a RAG application is so easy, and I'm going to show you how to do it using AstroDB.
Hence cavitation erosion.
Yeah, so what you're seeing on the top chart is actually 22 different materials that were tested for their cavitation erosion resistance. Okay, and so the blue dots are actually my predictions, and then the red crosses are the actual data for those materials. So what you see is a range of cavitation resistance going horizontally. That's typically the difference between a soft alloy and a hard alloy for different materials. For instance, all the way to the right, you've got very high cavitation erosion resistance. Those are typically tool steels, stellite, very hard materials. And the materials on the left have low cavitation resistance, things like copper, bronze, that sort of thing. Okay. And so I'm not sure if you can actually read some of the quotes here, but you know, every attempt in the past has basically failed miserably. So this is really a huge coup, being able to predict cavitation erosion. And the reason this is even being brought up is because the pressure and temperature of impact can be predicted by this equation. And so you can actually determine the thermodynamic equation of state. And it turns out for a lot of the hardest materials and the highest speed jets that you're going to achieve borderline fusion conditions just during the impact of the jet alone, even with.
So this right here, very important information in my own electrolysis, experimentation and development, and getting to the transmutation of elements and how it is done, and his chart here and his equations. I'm going to have to get much further into this and try to get a hold of those and start applying them to what I am doing.
Without having 0 points. Next slide, please.
Faceted cavitation.
Okay. Yeah, so this is an example of what I was seeing. The upper left corner, you can see there's some facets to the to that impact. It's largely hexagonal, and just below that, you can see a nice round impact for contrast. And below that particular picture, you can see a really nice impact, this hexagonal aluminum. And of course, look at that equilateral triangle impact on the right. That's in paper, actually. I'm also able to launch the reentrant jets out of the water and through the air through a device that I put together. So I'm able to do machining and fabrication in air and not necessarily submerged. So that particular act is a reentrant act at a paper target. And you can see it maintain the crystalline structure even after traveling 20 feet through the air. Next slide, please.
The water crystal.
Okay, so this is the gist of it right here. The crystal is able to link along the axis, like I pointed out, with OH bonds. But as you can see, the high pressure is compacting the hydrogen and oxygen in the tightest possible configuration, which, you know, if you think of a billiard rack and the way the balls, you know, stack up inside, they form equilateral triangles, because that's as close as you can put them together. So that's what's happening in the case of this water crystal, is it's actually squeezing the hydrogen bonds to the oxygen, so it's in a 90-degree configuration. So a hydrogen is pointing up along the axis, and another one points along the triangle structure that forms. And so this thing actually leaves a lot of exposed protons, and it generally has a positive charge, like on the face and on the sides, but it has a negative charge on the bottom, which is where, you know, the OH bond is allowed to bind. The result is this thing can form a closed loop. And if you look at the upper two pictures, that's the water crystal that is linked into a loop, twisted into a figure 8, and then embedded itself into steel. And when the crystal hit the steel, it shattered, and you can see a sequence of hexagons that form the image as it goes around the figure 8s. So then, to show that the protons are being heavily displayed, I reasoned that there must be 0 pH. So I did the old cliche, I did the litmus test. So I aimed the reentrant jets at the litmus paper, that's the center pictures. And for green litmus paper, you could see a red impact. And under better examination, that was actually a hexagon. And to the right, the orange orange paper showed a purple impact. Both of those were indicators of zero control. The lower right corner, that's an imprint into paper. That's another one of the paper targets that was struck from 7 meters away. And you can see there's a very fat head in the upper right corner, and there's a long whip tail coming down below that and then curving to the left. And in fact, the picture on the left, you can see that also. There's a fat head with a hexagonal profile, a long whip tail, and there's actually a hexagonal bulb at the end of that. That's an imprint that was left when it buried itself into rust. You can actually see the imprint of the crystal. Next slide, please.
Examples of the Leclerc effect.
Yeah, this is where the magic begins right here. I mean, this is the plate that I use to control the collapse of the cavitation bubble. So I'm launching the jet down through the hole. The zone surrounding the hole in the upper center picture, you can see the some of the anodized black aluminum has been burned away by the defocus of the laser. And so that's all that caused that. But if you see the lines going all the way across that plate from one side to the other, those are the trenches that were carved by the water crystals. So what's happened is that the bubbles collapsed next to the plate, launched a crystallized cavitation reentrant jet towards that hole, but then it turned 90 degrees and headed towards its induced negative electrostatic charge on the edge, and it headed 90 degrees towards it, the path of least resistance. And you can see several of those occurred. The close-up pictures on the left, you can see that the trench starts off narrow but actually becomes wider in the direction of motion. So that was the first indication that this thing was.
All right, I am a pause this here, and for those wanting to watch the rest of this presentation, I will be posting the link momentarily in the live chat here. We're about 2 hours in, and it is 3 a.m. in Calgary right now. I need to get to bed as I have things to do tomorrow, which is now today. But hey, we're starting, I guess, Friday off with the Free Energy Friday, launching BERN. Oops, wrong one. Move that. So this one. Hydrogen production here, the HHO gas or water clusters, the charge clusters, and what it's all about. Breakthrough Energy Research Network Conference that I will be putting together probably one every 3 months. So approximately 3 months from now, that is October. Well, hopefully have our first episode by then, our first conference. And thank you everyone for watching. I should be back this evening with League of Extraordinary Inventors, Mike over at Faraday Research, Gerald, WPG Enlightened for Truth. Hopefully Jeremiah shows up and a few others. And on that note, have a blessed day, and we will see you again soon. Ta-ta.
You crazy mother. Yeah. It's just burning.